Welcome to Week 1. What is disciplinary literacy and why is it important? I'm Hiller Spires.
And I'm Tim Shanahan.
This week we're defining disciplinary literacy, and we're exploring why we think it's important for deeper learning. As you know, disciplinary literacy is an emerging construct in the literacy field. We're learning more about the construct in the implementation context of the Common Core State Standards. The standards require students to think critically with text, to read, write, and speak using evidence-based information. Disciplinary literacy is the term that we use for these advanced skills and dispositions. And students need to learn these advanced skills and dispositions within each discipline over time.
A historian does very different work than, say, a biologist or a physicist. And because of that, the epistemological or the knowledge creation work that they do is so different. They use literacy in different ways, and it's those specialized aspects of literacy that we're really talking about when we talk about disciplinary literacy. I think a term that you'll hear a lot of people use is they'll talk about reading like a historian or writing like a scientist, and that's really, it's those special ways of using literacy that are either unique or just very specialized in a given discipline.
We know that disciplines include norms and expectations around discourse practices. As students learn to negotiate different discourse communities within the schooling process, it's extremely helpful if teachers make those practices and expectations explicit. So it's not just about the content of English, history, science, and mathematics, but also about the discourse and knowledge and how the knowledge is constructed within the field. There's emerging evidence now that if students have access to these tools, deeper learning can take place.
Every person who teaches at a high school or middle school in an English department, a math department, a science department, a social studies department, they're always dedicated to trying to make sure that kids have a deeper understanding of the work done in those fields, to not just get some facts and some superficial understandings, but to really be able to dig down and deeply appreciate a piece of literature, or to deeply understand some set of historical events and what led to them and what their implications were, and so on. I think the only way to get beyond a superficial level of knowledge is to start to come to the texts in those fields and those disciplines in a disciplinary way. Think of reading a history textbook, and you read somebody's account of what happened, in this particular event. You learn who the important people were and what the important events were. Maybe you learn the dates. I think you come away with some what appear to be facts, but that historians actually look at not as facts but as arguments. And so now imagine the student reading that same text, but now reading it with the idea that it isn't just a bunch of information to be memorized about that event, but it is really a set of arguments. And all of a sudden, it comes alive in a different way. Now, instead of it seeming like a series of facts, it's a series of like, as I say, arguments, decisions really that somebody has made, that they've looked at those documents and tried to make sense of it. And now you get to, in some sense, you get to look under the hood and see how that's working. I think you come away with a much deeper appreciation and understanding of what was going on, what the tension is. I think you see the information maybe is more conditional, that maybe if you had some other documents, you might get a different picture. I think you come away with a much richer understanding. And so I don't see how you can ever come to that level of understanding unless you actually engage the text in the same way that the people who put it together have come at it.
We're seeing that as schools implement the ELA standards across disciplines, oftentimes disciplinary literacy is being confused with the time-honored practice of content area literacy. Having taught content area literacy for over 20 years now, I've witnessed the high impact these strategies can have on students' capacity to process and comprehend text, especially for low and average readers. But we know that disciplinary literacy is not the same as content literacy. Content literacy is associated with intermediate literacy, as Tim and Cynthia Shanahan have illustrated. Disciplinary literacy, however, is advanced reading and writing, and it's particularized to a specific discipline. As educators, we need to develop our knowledge of the unique structures, practices, texts, and discourse of each discipline. We also need to understand how knowledge is created and communicated.